Hello and welcome to North Country Matters. My name is Donna Seymour. I'm a member of the St. Lawrence County unit of the League of Women Voters, one of the civic partners for this show. Today we have Tom Chappell and Betty Connolly in the studio with us, and they're both with Helping Hands of Potsdam. Tom and Betty, thank you so much for coming in. Tom is the executive director of Helping Hands of Potsdam, and Betty is a Helping Hands board member. You were on the show about 4 years ago, Tom, and to talk to us about the work that Helping Hands is doing, and you've added a lot of services and you've expanded your outreach since then. So I thought this would be a nice opportunity to find out what you've been doing. For our viewers, Helping Hands of Potsdam is a faith-based, not-for-profit organization serving Potsdam and the outlying area, and it's actually quite a large outlying area. It was founded in 2004 and is entirely supported by the kindness and the generosity of local churches, individuals, organizations, and businesses. Physically, it's located at the corner of Route 56 and Church Street in Hanawa Falls. So when you say Helping Hands of Potsdam, you really have to go to Hanawa to get the help, right?
Well, we serve all of St. Lawrence County with our furniture and housewares.
But that's where your physical location is. So Tom, you've been doing this kind of direct human service work now for quite a number of years. Tell us a little bit about your own background and how you came to this kind of service.
Well, as a junior in college in New Hampshire, I started working at a Salvation Army shelter and kept working for the Salvation Army for another 20 years. Was a Salvation Army pastor. We were in Glens Falls and Syracuse and Ogdensburg and Cortland. And I worked for Catholic Charities in Cortland for about 3 years, and then got the call to a church in Colton and needed a part-time job. And Helping Hands was hiring, and I was very, very impressed with the open-minded, progressive approach towards helping people that our board of directors at Helping Hands has.
Okay, thanks. And Betty, you are on that board of directors, and so tell us a little bit about how you decided to get involved with Helping Hands.
Well, I was fortunate enough to retire in 2014 at the end of the year, and I was trying to decide how I could more actively give back to the community. And I worked with Donna Chappell, Tom's wife, and she would talk about Helping Hands and what her husband was doing, and they were starting a free will lunch. And I said, that's it. I had been an administrator for many years, and I said, that's my calling.
You wanted to be a lunch lady.
I just wanted to peel potatoes. That was it. Not be in charge of anything. Just go in and do what I could to help. And that evolved into spending more time there, being asked to be on the board representing St. Patrick's Church in Colton, and most recently, Teresa Smith and I have co-chaired the golf tournament, which is our major fundraiser. So I'm not so much in the kitchen, but I do enjoy their food, and I enjoy praying with the group and working with the group and welcoming clients to the facility.
Okay, thanks. Tom, when you were here 4 years ago, you talked about how Helping Hands served more than 400 families and about 4,000 individuals during the course of 2014. How have the needs grown since then, or have they? Or are you still serving about the same number of folks?
Oh my goodness, no. The number of people on we have a computerized casework file is over 700 families now. It just continues to grow. And mind you, they don't all come at the same time, or they don't all come more than once sometimes, which is always great when we can help somebody get back on their feet.
Right.
However, that free lunch that Betty referenced has turned our facility into a senior center for local seniors, which is great.
When you were here in 2014, you were just getting that off the ground and just getting ready to start serving lunches and hoping that word would get out, and apparently it has.
It certainly has. And I was picking up a couch for Helping Hands, and I don't know if I shared this story with you the last time that I was here, Donna, but the fellow that was donating the couch had done his master's in social work at St. Lawrence, and he said, when I was doing my master's thesis, my goal was to identify the greatest need in St. Lawrence County, and it was social isolation among senior citizens. Well, that was quite a while ago that he did that master's degree. Since then, as we all know, our demographic is growing like crazy, and there are so many more seniors, and there aren't that many more programs for seniors, that many more places, senior centers to eat at. So we found that people have just loved our free lunch program and loved taking advantage of it, love the social life as much or more than the food. So in other words, they aren't starving to death necessarily, the folks that come and have lunch with us, but they're lonely. And they're, widows, widowers, even couples who get tired of probably just looking at each other's face after a while and want to have somebody else to socialize with. And the great thing is that some of them have ended up becoming volunteers. We get a lot of volunteers like Betty who are, 50-something and too young to stop working, but
The newly retired.
Newly retired, looking for
retired.
something to do. So that's a great need that has been filled. And, the need in terms of the number of people coming to the food pantry has actually been steady. Although I have to tell you, Donna, that new furniture barn has really been a big program for us, and it's continued to grow, and having the space has been wonderful. In the past, we were storing all our furniture and housewares in what's now the dining room. So we have to be very thankful to have that new building.
Yeah, you've really been able to reuse the space inside the building now that you have the outside storage, haven't you?
That room will fill on our Thanksgiving luncheon, and just a few weeks away will be our Thanksgiving luncheon, then a Christmas luncheon, and again at Easter it will be packed. There'll be standing room only. So.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about the furniture barn that you have and where the need for that came from, and also how it was funded, because it's quite a large facility.
It's 25 by 40, which is honestly, with the size of our footprint, as large as we could have built it. We're right to the edge of our property. And Dr. Mike Maresca spoke to Steve House, and he said, Steve, I want to do something for Christian. And Christian is a young man who lost his life about 10 years ago. And Steve and Lori have been, wanting to do something to keep their son's name alive. So because Michael Jr. and Christian were friends, Mike stepped up and said, I want to give you whatever it takes to build a nice building in Christian's memory. So $20,000 from Mike and Barb Maresca, another $20,000 of smaller donations that matched it, and we've got a beautiful new, totally insulated, heated facility with big overhead doors on both ends so that the stuff can come in and it goes out almost as fast as it comes in.
And that's exactly how it works, isn't it? It's
Yes, it does. It
rotation
turns over
of
just
stuff.
about every week, Donna.
Yeah.
And beds, couches, kitchen tables, refrigerators, stoves, you name it, whatever you need to set up household.
And talk a little bit about the folks who come to get some furniture for something. Sometimes they've, as a result of maybe burning out or or just needing to set up a house, isn't it?
Well, yeah, and if you have a fire, that's an extreme situation, and the Red Cross will help you some. And we've been through a fire, so we know what that's like.
Right.
But a lot of people just can't afford $1,000 for a brand new box spring and mattress. A lot of people are sleeping either on the floor or on an air mattress on the floor in St. Lawrence County. And that's really not okay, is it, when we have the means to try to address that situation. And for some people, I think a lot of times it gives them an excuse to buy a new bed. I can give my old one to Helping Hands, it's still in great shape.
And it's not just that. Sometimes it's a case of people who are downsizing and they literally don't need to have some extra furniture. I know in my case, I lost my parents last fall, and my sister and my daughter made many trips to Helping Hands with things that were still perfectly good, but no one in the family needed, and we were so happy to have a place for them, for that kind of stuff to be reused by other folks, because that kind of repurposing and turning things around is exactly how places like St. Lawrence County make ends meet, isn't it?
That's right, Donna, and we've had people pass and leave us $10,000, and we've had people pass and leave us a household of furniture, and both are as much needed, just as much. And we're happy to get not only those huge legacies and gifts, but also the quality furniture, because it's a huge need.
It is, and, you know, I also want to point out that you're the only facility in St. Lawrence County where people can come and get furniture. I mean,
That's
there's
right.
just nothing else that exists. No one else has the space to do what you folks do.
Not on an ongoing basis, you know, there are a few who will do it from time to time. I think St. Vincent de Paul and Messina does it from time to time, but honestly, it's a space issue where most people don't have the storage capacity to run a program like that,
That's right.
and it's labor intensive. It takes a lot of volunteers, and honestly, the ones right now who are making it work are, again, newly retired volunteers, just retired from Potsdam State. Two Potsdam State pensioners who, you know, come to lunch because they wanted somebody to have lunch with, but have turned out to be
Stayed
just
to work.
fantastic volunteers, that's right.
And
And they were there at 8 o'clock last night, still making pickups for Helping Hands.
Right.
And it's so good to be able to help people, that, you know, a person who's been homeless and just had the opportunity to get an apartment or get a place for themselves, and to see their face when they're able to go and actually furnish their entire place. It's wonderful, right, with the sheets and the bedding and I mean, it really, you know, take a set of dishes.
You're giving people an opportunity to be independent, sometimes again, and maybe in some cases for the first time, and that gives them a lot of pride and
Yes.
a lot of hope for the future, doesn't it?
That's right.
Absolutely.
That's right.
You know, when we get folks from Renewal House who are
Yeah.
coming out of domestic violence, who just left with the clothes on their back. We get folks who are maybe just got out of the psych center, and a caseworker from Ogdensburg will bring them. We get calls from Governor, from Messina. So we know that there's a huge need, and that's all over the county, not just in our little part of Hanover Falls, certainly.
And also the opportunity of having this separate building for the furniture barn has given the space inside a much more welcoming space
Right.
for those who are coming in to have lunches. And we would be certainly open to having other organizations in the county that might want to use it
That's
for
right.
a meeting or a luncheon, or we have a certified kitchen. So please give us a call if you're
And I
interested in that.
know, for example, the local living folks have used your space before when they're doing food
They were there last
demonstrations.
night,
Yeah, exactly.
making pickles.
Food demonstrations, and it's not always easy to find spaces like that have the equipment and the demonstration
That's
space
right.
either, is it? So that's really,
we're
a nice.
Board of
help.
Health certified
Right.
commercial kitchens.
And that again you got that kitchen as a result of tremendous donations from folks who were helping
That's
you
right,
out.
yeah, and the guy who donated that wishes to remain anonymous, but he knows who he is, and we're appreciative of that.
And that's, you know, that's nice for folks who maybe want to do something and don't necessarily need their name attached to it.
That's right, yeah.
You can always use those kinds of community efforts, can't you?
Somebody's been putting $100 in our mailbox every month, and with a scripture verse that says, "Do your giving in private." Is that what it says, Betty? Betty's opened that envelope a few times, I think. So that's great. And you know, the other thing about our being a nonprofit is that our philosophy at Helping Hands is that we want to make it as easy as possible for people to come to assistance, because honestly it's one of the hardest things that people have to do. Most of the people are not professionals who have learned how to manipulate the system for their own advantage. Most of the people are really hurting and really need heat, really need food. For some of the seniors that come in are really lonely and needing
Right.
encouragement and support.
And I know I've talked with Andrea Montgomery, who is the executive director of the Office of the Aging here in St. Lawrence County, and she often says that seniors have the most trouble asking for help because they're so used to being independent and they're so used to taking care of themselves, and all of a sudden they find themselves alone, they need some help, things aren't going the way they always have, and so having that kind of outreach that is so warm and welcoming is so important. And you've done some upgrades to the facility. You've got your parking is now, you got all kinds of parking there, and it's all good, smooth parking. And tell us about the new cooling center you put in this year.
Well, we put in air conditioning, and it was because I think Betty and I were getting hot, and not able to function because it was 86 degrees indoors
And
one day in the morning.
It didn't seem fair to have the air conditioner only in the office when.
When people were trying to peel potatoes in the kitchen?
Yes.
And that really is, that brings up an issue that we've seen over and over again is that a lot of times people don't have the money to buy an air conditioning at home, but they need to get out of that heat, even if it's
That's
only
right.
for a couple of hours a day. And the fact that cooling centers are available and that they can come and get the socialization, get a meal, and cool things off is really important, isn't it?
It was a very hot summer. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
working with our local businesses in the area who are always very kind to us as far as giving items to us at cost and having volunteers who are able to provide services for us, we're really able to do these projects
Right.
without taxing yet one more donation campaign.
And that really brings.
Yeah, and before we move on,
Okay.
I'd be remiss, I'm glad that Betty brought that up because I think we would be remiss if we didn't thank Merriman's for the generous discount that they give us on building materials for both a new building and just recently a new roof this summer, so.
Okay, so those are important, that's the way the
Shop
community.
at Merriman's.
Yeah, and those are the kinds of ways that the community supports
That's right.
itself. I mean, you know, they're in business, but they also know that the work that you're doing is absolutely critical, and they're helping out to the best of their ability. And the volunteers who donate labor, same thing. It's a way to give back, as Betty was saying. So let's kind of look at some of you have the food pantry, and people can get help there. You can do emergency firewood.
That's right.
I see, the last time I was by, I saw the wood racks were starting to fill up again.
Well, and Betty and I were talking about that today, Donna. 3 years ago, the Home Energy Assistance Program, which actually Betty was auxiliary caseworker for that program many years ago, it was cut by 50%. So there were a lot of senior citizens, especially who were on a fixed income, just that one Social Security check per month, who found themselves really scrambling to try to keep warm in the winter. So what we do is after they exhaust their first and second heat benefit, usually about March, if it's not too cold, sometimes in February, they'll call and they'll say, I'm out of fuel oil, I'm out of kerosene, I'm out of propane, I'm out of firewood, and we're able to help them with whatever they use to heat the house. And there are a few people still heating with electric, I guess, but not many.
And of course, in this last year, April was a pretty darn cold month.
It
There was a lot of
was,
snow.
yeah, we kind of
and-
got a teaser in February and then we paid for it in April,
Yeah,
didn't we?
I guess we did. So, and you can also help with transportation issues, and that's a huge issue in a county like ours, where you have to go a long way sometimes to get medical care or some other kind of thing, and people don't always have reliable transportation. So talk a little bit about that.
Well, and that's a great segue from the heat program. It started because people were saying and calling and saying, I can't get through to heat, the phone rings off the hook and nobody calls me back, and they're not approving me for my heat, and it's almost November here and it's getting cold. And what happens is that they're so swamped with people and so swamped with paperwork that, and if it gets to that point, you have to go in person. And of course, if you're a little old lady who doesn't have a car, that's a problem. So we have enough volunteers who are able to and willing to use their own vehicles and go pick up people, bring them to DSS, wait while they go apply for HEAP, and then bring them home. And it's needed because it can be, as Betty will tell you, it can be a daunting process.
Oh, yes.
It's 2 days that there's a line out the door when it's time to apply for HEAP. So.
And Betty, you mentioned a little bit before about some of the fundraising efforts. The golf tournament is your big one. Talk a little bit about the various ways that that Helping Hands funds all of the work that you do, because you don't get any grant money, you don't get any government money, you're completely self-funded, aren't you?
Well, we shouldn't say that because the Northern New York Community Foundation has been very generous to us, both when we built the new kitchen and then also when we built the new furniture barn. So we want to thank Community Foundation of Northern New York for their generous support. But other than that, you're absolutely right. We have some senior citizens who get paid through a federal employment program designed to help senior citizens get back into the workforce. So we're thankful for that indirect subsidy of 2 of our employees, but the vast majority of our workforce are volunteers, and almost 100%, you're correct, of our budget comes from direct mail. And you mentioned golf. We need to give both Betty and her sidekick Teresa Smith credit, because they've brought that golf tournament just within 3 years from $20,000 to $30,000. So that's a huge increase to a small budget like ours to pick up an extra $10,000.
And we want to especially thank, once again, the community business members who are supportive, who give us everything from coffee to help serve to the golfers, to helping with other food, helping with ice, and the monetary
That's right.
donations. Some very large, very, we need to thank the local and shop locally every time we can, because it's the small businesses who are strongly support us. And the golf tournament it becomes almost at least a 10-month process, because there'll be letters and starting this month actually, until next July. So if there's any golfers out there, give us a call. We'd love to have you play.
A one-day event, it does not happen or get organized in one
And we
day.
certainly have it takes a team. Our board members, our committee members, they're all wonderful. They're very, very supportive. It's not just 2 people. We really appreciate all the help. And in addition to that, we have newsletters that go out. Spring,
Five
fall.
newsletters a year, the 4 quarterly plus the Christmas appeal. And until the golf tournament grew so much, that fall newsletter, which we're getting ready to drop in the mail, was always our largest fundraiser. And so if people can give, I know this is the time when people think of year-end gifts, and especially that those that go to Florida all winter are thinking, okay, before I leave for Florida, I should support Helping Hands, and we appreciate that.
Well, that's good. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about how to donate. And it isn't just money, it's your time, your talent, your goods, like to the furniture barn, and financially. So talk a little bit about how people can do all that kind of donating and that kind of volunteering, please.
That's a great question, Donna, and I think Betty's a great example. She came down, and of course, we knew Betty, so it was easy. We didn't have to check her references. But she came down right out of retirement with a great set of skills, and so even though she jokes about wanting to peel potatoes, we will take and plug people in where their gifts are. And obviously, she's board member potential, so it didn't take too much convincing to get her to be a board member. And honestly, we want people who have a sympathy and an empathy, I guess is the better word for the board, because that's the most important quality for someone who wants to volunteer at Helping Hands, is that they're going to be able to love on the people that come through the doors. We're small enough that even our very important president of our board of directors, Ed Sachs, comes down and interfaces with the people. We're not a big, giant nonprofit. I work 20 hours a week, so I rely on lots of volunteers. And one of the great things about our board, for example, is that at least half of them volunteer there on, I think, a weekly basis. So they know what's going on.
It's all
and
hands-on.
they have a love for people. And so I'd say, Donna, really that's the only prerequisite to be a volunteer at Helping Hands, is to have a love for people. We're small enough and our space is small enough that if someone comes along who really doesn't have compassion for others, it usually doesn't work out, does it? So if you have a love for working with people, we'll find a place for you. Obviously, we're a Christian organization, but you don't have to be a Christian. We love everybody, and we treat everybody the same, don't we?
Absolutely.
Well,
Absolutely.
and the sad part of that is that we know the need is so huge, especially in St. Lawrence County, where there's so much indigenous poverty. There's such social isolation, as you talked before. People who live far, far away from other people, and there's just some towns just don't have a lot of services at all. So that's one area where you can maybe help out in a community. I know when you can drive through a town and there's not a gas station, the only thing you might see is a post office.
That's
if they're
right.
lucky, that's not enough. That's not enough contact with other folks, is it?
That's right, yeah.
And we have some people who donate cases of food. We'll be running low of peanut butter, and all of a sudden someone comes in with a case of peanut butter or jelly, non-perishables, of course, and we appreciate those donations because a quick story, sitting there at lunch one time, and a woman sat next to me, and we were just chatting, and I really thought she was a new volunteer and welcome to the space, and she turned to me and she said, "I don't have enough food for my son for the weekend." And just to talk about it makes me want to tear up. And, no question, let's just go into the food pantry and help you out, and no questions asked. We have a database where we keep basically statistical information.
Right.
But we're not, it isn't a huge database. We don't have social services hooked into our base, but we're there to help people.
And you're not part of any organized, you don't get food from like the food bank of Central New York or anything like that?
Only because in the contract that you have to sign with the food bank, they want you to sign a statement which says that you're not going to share Jesus basically with the folks that come in for help, and that's kind of who we are.
Right.
And we don't force prayer on anyone or spiritual counseling on anyone, but we try to, especially when we, like Betty mentioned, sense a need, we try to offer it. And honestly, I don't think we've ever had anybody turn down prayer. No, there's nobody that won't let you pray for him. I think if it's done in the right way, I think it's all about how you do it, isn't it?
Sure. And how you approach people and with respect and with
I'm a
compassion.
Wesleyan. I'm not trying to force the Wesleyan denomination on anyone. Betty's a Catholic. She's not trying to force Catholicism on anyone, but
And you
I think
have
at the heart of it,
a ton of churches
we're all Christians.
Right,
So.
and a lot of different churches are part of your ministry
That's
area,
right.
so you get a lot of help from a lot of different folks of faith, right?
That's right, and honestly, Cindy Talcott had a heart, a love for people, but also a love for God, and she was tremendously effective as a one-on-one counselor. And so we try to take advantage of those opportunities to talk to people one-on-one, and sometimes it's just over the phone, Donna, where
Right.
somebody comes
Yep.
and they need to be talked down off the ledge. They're panicking because they haven't got heat, or they've got a sick child, and often, even if we can't help them that much, we can almost always, it doesn't take much effort to point them in the right direction.
Right.
And there are so many times when charities and organizations, bureaucracies get so busy that they don't have the time to even point you in the right direction, and that's discouraging. You can only call so many places before you just give up.
It's hard enough to make
So we
that
try not to be that place.
It's hard to make that first call when you need help.
That's
And
right.
if you don't get the
If
help
you
you
get the
need,
door
you think
slammed in
twice
your
about,
face, that's
you
right.
don't want to make a second one. Well, Tom and Betty, I really appreciate you coming in today to talk about the work that Helping Hands is doing and the work that you are doing. I'm always impressed every time I'm up there for whatever reason to see the facilities and to see how busy it is and how many people are constantly donating time and all that kind of stuff, because that is how you build community. And you have built a real community around that facility and around your idea. So congratulations, thank you, and for goodness sakes, keep it up.
That's
because
right.
we know it's needed.
Well, and thank you for your very, very kind and generous words. We want to just, again, as Betty mentioned a little bit, thank our board of directors. They're really exceptional people who put their own names out there in our support on a daily basis. All the volunteers, and I'll tell you, somebody called me from another charity last week and kind of wanted to know, how do you grow a charity, basically? How do you get more financial support and so on and so forth? And they kind of got me thinking that the key to our success, we have great people and a great board and great volunteers, but the first thing we do, Donna, when we get into the office in the morning is just to get together, and it's usually only 10 or 15 minutes, but we'll just go around the table and pray. And we've seen where God has met our needs and brought us in these huge donations that certainly I don't have the leverage or the clout to procure those giant donations, but God does, and sometimes He uses people, doesn't He? Influential people who we're fortunate. Some of them are on our board, and they would probably tell you the same thing, wouldn't they, if you talk to each board member, that you know, don't thank me, thank God, because he takes care, he wants to take care of folks. And I'll close with one scripture, Donna, because you know, I'm a preacher, so I gotta preach a little bit.
That's right.
In Matthew 25, there's a litmus test for salvation. And Jesus said, if you help the poor and you love the poor, you're going up. If you refuse to help the poor, it's like you didn't help me, and you're going down. So, you know, we get so hung up on doctrine and spiritual tests and, you know, philosophies of religion, but Jesus made it pretty simple in Matthew 25. If you want to love me, love my people. If you love my people, it's just like you've loved me and helped me.
Well,
I'll close with that.
I think that's great, and I have to say that I suspect there'll be way too many politicians who won't make it up the rate they talk. So thank you both for coming in. These conversations are a production of North Country Matters, which is filmed here in the Fred W. Cleveland Computer Center of the Potsdam Public Library. This show is a civic collaboration between the League of Women Voters of St. Lawrence County, the American Association of University Women, and the Potsdam Public Library. Until next time, remember, our North Country matters. Tom,
Thank
always
you.
such a pleasure.
Yeah.